Those two colors are going to completely transform the way you edit photos, and they're going to make you look so much more competent and professional. I have been a professional photographer for over 20 years. I've seen the fads come and go. I've gone through film. I've gone through digital. I've seen AI come, all this stuff. It works anywhere. You can do this in any app. What I'm going to show you today is so simple that it should be automatic, but I've realized it's not. I go out, I do these sessions, I'm always experimenting. I do a lot of sessions that are just collaborations, just to experiment, just so I can make videos here on the channel, just so I can show you guys things, so I can test lighting and shadow. I'm in these groups, a lot of these beginner groups, and I'll respond because most of the responses, I'm going to be honest, and I know you've seen this, most of the responses in the Facebook groups are such horrible advice. They're clearly from people who have no idea what they're doing, but they get super offended if someone actually contradicts them. I'm seeing really bad advice being given to new photographers. So I try to give advice. Most of them are just AI fakery now because that's what's filled most of the photo groups, but most real photos that people are actually trying to get help and feedback and advice on, they completely lack any technical knowledge of photography. And this still matters. It still matters what we're doing in camera. Today's tip is actually so simple. And it actually comes from a comment, a feedback I left for somebody just recently. And it's such a common problem where people come in and they're editing and everything's just over the top. There's no separation from background to subject. I want you to look at this for just a second. How the greens are very subdued and the oranges are not over the top. Now, yes, I've used a Filmus preset. I spent hundreds of hours refining film looks, and many of you guys use my film looks, and you know that they change your baseline in terms of editing. But you don't have to have those to do what I'm showing you today. Let me reset it. Here's the raw, right? It's a pretty good raw file. Okay, now I've re-edited it to more how people would normally edit, right? A little contrast, a little shadow, highlight. Not a bad edit, but this is how people edit most of the time today. And when I look at these groups, it's always like kind of orangey. Everything's bright, everything's even, everything's lifted, everything's kind of pushed to the right. We're always pushing sliders, push to the right. No, stop. Digital's not film. It doesn't have these subtle nuances and roll-offs and softer colors. Most of the digital camera sensors kind of have this even color coming through them, right? Where everything's kind of at this high level. And then you come in and you push sliders around them. Now, oftentimes they're far worse. I know you've seen these photos. I know you've experienced this yourself if you're a photographer with any experience, or if you're new. There's nothing terribly wrong about this edit, but it screams digital camera. It screams, I'm trying too hard. It screams, I don't actually really understand tone and color nuance and shadow. Okay, let me show you the tip. I no longer have the film preset applied that we started with, which is normally what I will start with, which eliminates this problem altogether because we're taking those true film looks. I spent hundreds of hours getting those true film looks to look true. But what I want to do here is just show you how to do this in any app. You can play with curves and exposure and shadow and highlight and do all this stuff, but right here in HSL is all you need to do this trick. And you can find this in Capture One, in On One, in Lightroom, in Photo Raw, orange and green. This is actually a baseline that brings you a lot closer to how film actually works, because it didn't overdrive these colors like this, okay? And digital does it so badly. Is go to orange and turn it down a little bit. Watch what happens. Watch the skin tones, okay? Softened. Now you can also mix this a little bit with hue. And so you can, if you got a little too much red or a little too much green, you can move that around depending on the skin tone you're looking for. Only two sliders today, two colors rather. I know we have different sliders for hue, saturation, and luminance, but mostly what you want to start with is luminance. The other one, and people sometimes get the orange. They rarely understand the green. Watch what happens when I turn green down. Okay, watch our subject. Look what just happened. And I drop green a lot. Orange is pretty subtle. Green, I'm not timid, okay? Drop that green to about 30 points down. Oftentimes I'll even go lower. The lower you go in green, the more you kind of get this filmic look. Notice how what's happening. We're not making selective color, guys. You're reducing that green to make it more natural because digital has too much green by a long shot. It's not the real plant. It's not like it is in the real world. And what happens is you already have these bold skin tones. The green's distracting you from them. As soon as you pull those greens down, what happens? We've corrected our skin tones already with the oranges. As soon as you pull the saturation of the green down, the subject now stands out. But we can go further with luminance, right? You can push the orange up just a little bit for skin tones. Don't get too crazy with this because it'll look weird. But here's the next thing. Go to green and darken the green. You don't need an AI mask for this. You don't need any special tools. You don't have to go all the way down. I'm going to also darken that green by about 30. Look at the difference that just made. Watch what happens if I turn off the HSL settings. This is how people are editing in 2024. This is what's on the groups. This is what we see. This is 2 sliders later. Now you might say, if this is new to you, you might be like, oh, it doesn't have enough orange. It doesn't have enough color. I know. When you first start doing this, we're so used to oversaturating everything and so used to things looking like this that it can be hard to dial back. This is why I say one thing, go download some film presets. I'll put a link. There's some free ones on my Filmist page, right? If you buy them, that's great. But at least go download my free ones because they're doing this automatically, right? They're based on film, and film already does this. This is why film looks so good. Well, one of the reasons. There's obviously a lot more than 2 sliders involved. Sometimes I'll spend a week refining one film look just to do an update of Portra or Ektar or something like that. But you don't have to use presets. You can apply what I just showed you in any app on any photo. Darken the greens, pull the saturation of the greens, pull back the saturation of the oranges a little bit, and lift the brightness of the oranges just a little bit. And then you can play with hues and other things and all the other settings. Even if I was going to something else after, I would start with a film look, right? I'd do, hey, a 400H, do an RSX 100, do a Portra 160, do an Ektar, which I actually really like on this. But once you understand this and figure it out, always save it and get a baseline, because otherwise you won't do it every time and you'll fall into those same habits. You want to fall into the habit of a softer, more nuanced edit. And then if you say, no, on this photo, I need more, then you push up, and that's going to completely transform the way you see shadow and light and tone. And it's going to separate you from these. It's going to separate you from just like, oh, I got a camera last year. Go do it. You'll see what I mean. Some of you I know are already doing this, already using these processes because I've mentioned them in other workshops before. They're game changing. All right, you guys, enjoy. We'll see you next time.